Dan Breen, roll A, take one.
Mr. Breen, you were born in Tipperary in 1894, I think.
Yeah, 11th of August.
Tell me, what were conditions like in that part of the country when you can first remember them, say in the early years of the century?
Conditions were bad, generally. Not on the food standard, but on the money standard. Money was very, very scarce commodity. Very few people had anything. And the farmers there, you see, they were all rented tenants. And the average rent there was about £2 to £2.10 an acre. I'm not sure now whether that's statute acre or what they call this Irish acre. I wouldn't be too sure on that point. But the rents were abnormally high, you see. And that's why you'd often come across what they'd call, they'd see a sow on the road, they'd always call, that's the ratepayer. You might have heard that expression. I remember an Englishman asking me in England, about 30 years ago, he said, was it true that we kept the pig in the kitchen? I said, no, we'd have him in the bedroom, I said. Because if we didn't, I said, we couldn't pay the rent of bastards like you.
Was there very much political feeling among people in those days?
In my young days, there were, I remember the Boer War, you see, that's one of the longest memories in my head. And the people were very much pro-Boer. And the reason why that sticks in my mind was all the dogs were all called Crangy and Kruger. So, you see, they couldn't be very much said to them then. They could call the dog Crangy or Kruger, but the police couldn't interfere.
Would the police interfere otherwise?
Oh, they won't. I might give you the case of the old tailor, Pat Jones. He was a local tailor, one of those Fenian bearded men, you know. He was coming home from the prairie, and he, passing the local barrack, he called for three cheers for the Boers. So he was duly hauled in. And after some time, weekdays or maybe a week, he was brought before the magistrate, and he got a month in jail. And the magistrate said to him, have you anything to say, Jones, for your crime? I know, he said. By God, I'm a Boer and a Boer still. And he got another month.
How did you come to be involved in the nationalist movement yourself?
Well, it came from my mother somehow. I don't remember my father. He died when I was about 4, thereabout. My mother was very nationalistic. And a peculiar thing about my mother, she couldn't read manuscript, but she was a perfect reader of print, which was very common then. And when you bought one of those books, there were paperback books then of Tone and Emmett and all those, they were issued. Get them for 9 pence. But 9 pence was a lot of money. People say that was cheap today, but there was a lot of collecting in 9 pence. One of the things this is a bit of a funny thing now that happened to me. I had a threepenny bit, and that must be over 60 years ago. And I was into Prairie Town. And I saw those lovely apples in the window, big red apples, nice red apples. So I went in and bought tuppence of them. And I went back to the local yard to eat them. And I was poisoned. They were tomatoes. I never saw tomato before. And my tuppence was gone. And I was poisoned. And I was most of the day trying to wash the taste out of my mouth. That goes to show you, how little we knew about anything. The only thing vegetable in my time was cabbages and turnip. Not the variety of vegetables now that you see. That was the only common vegetable at that time.
Did the political tradition of the Fenians survive?
It did.
Tipperary?
It did. You see, Ballahurst Fort where they met in '67 was about, as the crow flies, about a mile, maybe a mile and a half from me. And the tradition was there, you see. And the old people used to say that Massey, General Massey, he lived about 4 miles from me on the southeast from me, about 4 miles. He went to Ballahurst and he saw how badly organised they were, and we'll arm there. He told them go home. He said, if you were armed, he said, or trained, he said, I'd lead you, but he said, go home. Well, he was one of the Masseys. He was seemingly an outside son of one of the Masseys, but he was the hero of Sedan in his time. He was looked up to very much. And they gave him this estate there in Grantstown, near Thomastown. You know Thomastown, this side of Golden.
Yes.
Near Kilfeacle. He was a decent old fellow.
Was the influence of landlords, big landowners, very strong in the country?
Oh, very much so. They're the power of life and death, you see. And they use it to the fullest.